So when you have poor interoception, you aren't necessarily going to like know when you need to use the restroom. You're not going to necessarily know like when you're in pain. You're not going to get those like hunger and thirst cues. And so it's really just an important sense so that you can take care of your body.
Welcome to the Helping Kids Be Kids podcast by Little Lighthouse. I'm Ann Chinworth, the outreach manager here, and we're here today with the beautiful Hannah Jimenez,
Thank you.
our director of education. And so we are doing a series right now on the senses, and today we're going to be talking about a sense that you might not have heard of. It's not one of our typical 5 senses, but this one is called interoception. So Hannah, would you mind telling us a little bit about what interoception means?
Yeah. So this is one that as a special education teacher, I really didn't know a lot about. And I kind of just learned about it on my own, like reading things online and like learning like through different blogs from like different like occupational therapists and people. And I was like, this is what some of my kids are experiencing that I wasn't understanding. So interoception is the sense that takes all the signals that your body is giving your brain and processes what's happening within your body. So like if my throat is sore, that my throat is like hurting and it signals my brain saying like there's something going on, your throat is sore. And it tells me, oh, I have a sore throat, and I know what I need to do to take care of having a sore throat.
Yeah.
Whereas someone with poor interoception isn't going to be able, like their brain isn't going to make that connection and process that information, and they're not going to realize that they have a sore throat.
Okay.
So when you have poor interoception, you aren't necessarily going to like know when you need to use the restroom.
Oh, wow.
You're not going to necessarily know like when you're in pain. You're not going to get those like hunger and thirst cues. And so it's really just an important sense so that you can take care of your body.
Yeah. Sounds very important to taking care of your body. A lot of I feel like our body just has so many internal signals that if you aren't understanding those signals, then you're going to miss so many things about yourself. So how does it affect someone who has poor interoception? Yeah,
so like I mentioned, like when you have poor interoception, you're not able to figure out like how to take care of your body. So this is really common in people who have like a diagnosis of autism or ADHD. ADHD, I kind of said that funny. But it's very common for them, and a lot of times it will lead to like kidney infections and bladder infections because they're not using the restroom regularly because their body's not telling them that they need to go, or their brain's not realizing that they need to go. Or it can look like an eating disorder because they're not getting those hunger cues, and so they're not realizing, oh, I need to eat, and they're like skipping too many meals. Same thing with thirst, like they can get easily dehydrated because they don't feel thirsty. Just anything like that, it can really affect you physically, which then in turn affects, you know, how you are all the time. So think about like when you're really hungry, how you feel. I mean, I get like kind of hangry, like, you know, like we joke about it, like, oh, I'm hangry. Like I get like kind of like angry and frustrated easily when I'm really hungry. And if you think about not realizing that you're hungry, you might just kind of feel like frustrated all the time and not be able to figure out like, why am I feeling so frustrated? It's like, well, you're not really even frustrated. It's that you need to stop and eat and take care of your body. Your blood sugar is low, you know? And so it kind of can look like some, especially in children, it can look like some like bad behaviors. And so these kiddos might just like feel overwhelmed and frustrated all the time, maybe because they're hungry, maybe they're thirsty, maybe they're like really feeling sick, but they're not able to tell you about it. And so that could look like crying or throwing a fit or like melting down. When they're sick, they just don't realize it, and they don't have the skills to tell you that they're feeling bad.
And on the opposite end, what does it look like when they have a low sensory threshold to interoception?
So that's going to look more just like kind of your typical person. So now you can like feel those feelings like deeply. And so maybe you like when you feel pain, you like really feel pain, or when you're hungry, like you really feel hunger. So it kind of goes it's kind of the same as that like higher threshold where there's going to be some like behaviors that look maybe like bad behavior, but really it's just that you're like feeling like so hungry or so thirsty. And I mean, if you think about toddlers, like I know my kids, you know, it's snack time and they are starving. They're absolutely starving. Like they're not going to live another second if they don't eat right now. And it's not necessarily that they're just like being dramatic. Like they just really feel really hungry and that's all they can think about. And so that's something to think about with like kids in a classroom. Like if they're starting to get hungry and they're one of those kids that they have that kind of lower threshold, if it's almost lunchtime, they might not be able to focus on anything other than lunchtime.
Can that, you talked with food, you talked about it being leading to them like forgetting to eat. Can it be the opposite, like where they don't feel full either?
You know, I'm not sure.
I was like, I just wondered that. I don't know.
I'm not, you know, and like I said, that's one of those things I didn't know a lot about before, even in my like earlier years of teaching. And I've had to kind of like learn about it on my own because there's not a lot of like public, you know, easy to access information about this. And so I really do appreciate like different therapists who put information out there for us to learn about because, you know, especially parents, I mean, as a mom, I wouldn't know any of that. Just on my own. So
I have never even heard of this since.
Still
working here. So great. Okay. Well, that's something we can ask our OTs, I guess.
We'll
have to figure that out. So what are some strategies for parents and caregivers and teachers, just anyone who interacts with these kids? What are some strategies for them to help them regulate their bodies and understand their bodies and feel those senses and you know when they need to go to the bathroom and take care of their bodies?
Yeah. So some things you can do are like setting timers to remind, like for potty breaks. So just using a timer and kind of having them on a bathroom schedule because their body's not going to tell them that they need to go. And that can be really frustrating when you're trying to potty train, I know. But I think just like realizing that their body's not giving them those signals and it's okay, that it's something you can work on like with an occupational therapist, but just set them on a timer, take the stress off yourself. You know, like you don't have to be so worried about like, oh no, like they're never going to be able to just like know when they need to go to the bathroom. They have time to learn. There's always room to grow and learn. But just take that stress off yourself and just set timers and just have them go on a timer. And the same thing kind of with like eating and different things. Like there's some different autistic adults that I follow on Instagram, and a lot of them talk about how when they're like if they're like working at home in their work day, that they'll set timers to stop and remind themselves to eat because they won't feel hungry. And so they'll remind themselves with a timer, like, okay, at this time I need to stop and eat lunch. At this time I'm going to have a snack, or at this time I'm going to drink water. I mean, they may even need a reminder that they need water.
I should just start doing that for my own health.
It's not a bad idea for all of us to drink more water.
And what other tools, like, are there specific classroom tools that can be used as well? Or
so here in our classrooms at Little Lighthouse, a lot of them use the zones of regulation, and within the zone, so it just teaches you about different ways that you're feeling and being able to identify your feelings and like what you're experiencing. And it kind of starts simple as far as just like what color zone are you in, and they start by just learning about the different colors and what the different colors mean. And they include like I'm feeling sick, frustrated, worried, calm, I'm happy and ready to learn, things like that. And they talk through the different zones, and they talk about how it's not a bad thing to be in any of the zones. Like they're all okay, and it's all like natural feelings. So it really is like a very affirming way to help start learning about how you feel. And so just starting really simple with like happy and sad, and then like working up into like trying to like listen to those signals from your body. And just thinking about like, what is this feeling? And so like maybe like when they do have a sore throat and you've kind of figured out like, okay, we went to the doctor and your throat was all red, you obviously have strep throat, you know, your throat's sore, and talking about how that feels and what that looks like, and helping them understand, okay, next time I feel this way, I know that my throat is sore. And so just like using those times that you know it's happening as an example.
That's great. I love that teaching them how to identify what they're feeling and then some tools to help them through those feelings to get back to, that green zone or that ready to go zone. So that's great. I'm like, I wish I would have had this as a kid because I feel like I felt a lot of feelings. I felt things really deeply. And a lot of times it was like, okay, stop being mad or stop, acting out. But if I would have had, learned some tools to process those emotions and identify those emotions, I think it would have helped me a lot, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And a big part of zones is not just identifying it, but then once they've identified their feelings and tried to like figure out what they're actually feeling and what's happening in their body, then they can choose a tool that's going to help them. And I think that that's really a good way to help them like kind of carry over some like emotional regulation too, so they can learn like, okay, when I like get mad that this thing happens, this is the tool I know I can use.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, we have talked a little bit about our therapists, and it sounds like as far as professionals, OTs are kind of the people that we go to.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that besides OTs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and with this, I think like talking with your pediatrician and kind of like finding a care plan like for your child. If you think your child is struggling with this, always reach out to your pediatrician and kind of figure out if there's like some kind of system or something you want to have in place for when you think your child might be sick, or just different strategies that will work like for your family.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Anything else you'd like to add or?
No, but I think, this is just one of those, like we keep saying, like it's so unheard of and not really talked about. I think just, we have a blog that we'll post about it and really just dive in and listen and learn more about it so you can really help your children.
I love that. Yeah, like she said, check out our blog, and hopefully these podcasts have, you've learned a lot in this series, and we'll continue to do all the senses. So check out all the others in the series, and thanks for joining us today.